I've been building and doing DIY for over 20 years. And in this video, I'm going to share 9 tools that changed my life, along with some personal stories and anecdotes around each one. And whether you're just getting started or have been doing this longer than I have, I think there just might be something in this video for everyone. Let's talk shop. The first tool on the list is this Mechanics Toolkit. This set is very special to me because it's actually some of the first tools I ever owned. They were given to me as a gift in my early 20s. And because of that, they contributed heavily to my love of DIY and building things. Having a set of metric and standard sockets in your toolkit is an absolute no-brainer. You're going to use these things all the time for the rest of your life. Now I get it, it's possible you don't need a giant set of every possible socket. But you could use something like this. These sets are made by Makita and come in standard and metric. They also come with this standard 1/4 inch attachment to use with any nut driver or drill. This may contradict some of the other creators you follow, but table saws kind of suck, and you may not need one if you're just getting started. They're a sizable investment in both money and space in a small shop. Don't get me wrong, if Harvey or SawStop want to send me a fancy saw, I will not turn down delivery. But for the money and space in a limited size shop, the miter saw is the most bang for your buck you're going to get. I started out with a basic Harbor Freight special. It was like 50 bucks. And for the average DIYer, whether you're snagging the one from Harbor Freight or if you can get a good deal on a really nice compound miter saw like this one, it's going to serve you well for 99% of the projects that you need to do. So don't think you have to buy the fanciest table cabinet saw. Don't think you have to buy the fanciest compound miter saw. Buy what you can afford and get to work. This is the Kreg AccuCut XL. You can see it comes with a sled that you just put your circular saw into and strap it down, and then it goes right on this channel, and you can rip long boards, I think, easier than the table saw. The table saw, if I'm especially sheet goods, you know, you're wrangling this giant 4x8 sheet and trying to get it on there, and then you're having to fight it side to side, and so you end up with a wobbly cut. This thing, I just slap it down on the sheet good, strap this thing in, line everything up, and then just rip it, and it works perfectly. It's solved that problem for me. And then they make this guy. This is a Rip Cut Guide, and you can see it has almost the exact same sled, and it has a ruler here. And if you have sheet goods or something that you know you have a straight side on, you just set this to the width that you want, strap your circular saw into it, and just run it down the sheet good. So for repeatable cuts, this thing is the way to go. I use this mostly, the AccuCut, mostly for dimensioning lumber. So when I've got a rough sawn piece of wood that has jaggedy edge, I can put this thing down, find a straight place, rip it, and then once that's ripped to that straight edge, I can use that straight edge to run it across the table saw to get a perfectly straight board, or I can flip it over and cut the other side with this. Honorable mention in that category is also a Savage straight edge like this, where it's got a non-slip on the bottom, but it's not like a ruler. It's not going to bend, as you can see in one of my recent videos why you don't use a ruler. But this thing you can also lay down if you're doing cross cuts, clamp this straight edge down on it, and then you can just run it right down the side. And that also helps with that as well. All of this together is cheaper than buying a table saw or a track saw. So money well spent. Battery operated tools are so flippin' cool. Having a whole set of tools that you can use the same battery to swap out and do a variety of tasks without dragging extension cords all over the yard is amazing. These days, we get so hung up on the color of each other's tools that we completely take for granted how far the technology has come in the last 20 years, that all the manufacturers can create these amazing tools and make them affordable and available to nearly everyone. Regardless of which tool tax bracket you're in, chances are you own a set of technological marvels that will serve you well into the future. Unless you're strapping them together to fight it out in the backyard. This is why we can't have nice things. And on the topic of more expensive tools, this is a Festool random orbital sander. Everybody likes to hate on Festool, but I've seen so many creators using this thing and touting its wonderfulness. And I just kept telling myself, there's no way that that thing is that much better than my DeWalt random orbital sander. But then I'm a curious person and I keep seeing all these guys use this stuff and I get a little jealous. So I went down to my local Woodcraft to give it a look. This thing is not cheap, and I was already skeptical that it could possibly live up to the hype. But I overheard the cashier talking to another customer about their return policy. He called it the Redneck Rental Program. So I pulled the trigger and bought this thing, fully intending to bring it home, test it out, find out that it was garbage, and return it for a full refund. But as soon as I turned this thing on, I noticed the difference. The grip, the vibration, the sound, the dust collection, everything was totally next level. I'd never seen anything like it as far as a difference from one tool to another tool. So I kept it. The dust collection alone was worth it to me, but now that I've used it for many months since, it is superior in every way. So while in the last segment I said you don't need the most expensive tools, there are some areas where it's worth it to buy once and cry once. And speaking of dust collection, behind me you can see this sort of monstrosity I've constructed. I've watched a ton of YouTube videos as people detailed their amazing dust collection setups, and I sort of aggregated the bits that I liked into this piece that goes all the way down the wall. And then behind that, I've got a Super Dust Deputy attached to a 30-gallon container. You may not need something this big. The best improvement in quality of life that I got from dust collection was when I bought the very first Dust Deputy. The little small one, I think it's like 70 bucks or something. Comes with a 5-gallon bucket and you just attach it to a shop vac. And that thing changed my life. The only thing I didn't like about it was that I had to pick it up and move it to different tools, but I still did that and I still used it and it saved me so much time. But if you have a small shop and you are just considering dust collection, try the Dust Deputy. Or one of the knockoffs is probably fine too. Huge quality of life improvement in being able to just dump that bucket, never even really having to open the shop vac unless you just don't notice that you filled up the bucket. Amazing. Dust collection is amazing. I love it. This is a planer, and this was a sort of level up tool for me in that I was just doing all my DIY and all my projects for years just using wood from the big box stores. But once I discovered that I could get real walnut, I could get black limba, I could get sapel, I could get all these woods I hadn't even heard of. It expanded my options there in that I could get this rough sawn lumber and clean it up into beautiful, beautiful pieces. So while this is not a must-have, this is like a next step. If you don't have a planer, being able to clean up your own rough sawn lumber and turn it into beautiful things is amazing. And I use this thing on every project just about. So not a must-have, but a next level. I inherited my father's old air compressor, and I use that thing all the time around the shop, whether airing up tires, using to clean dust off work surfaces, and also pneumatic tools. But by far, the most useful tool that I use that thing for are pneumatic nailers. You can see here I have an assortment of nailers. I've got fence staplers, I've got framing nailers for putting together 2x4s, makes that stuff a cinch. I have finish nailers for putting on trim, for attaching cabinetry, but this is something I'd never heard of. It's a pin nailer. But instead of the traditional nail, it shoots these syringe-like needles or pins. those pins are practically invisible. So you can use them to pre-glue and then fire those pin nails in to hold in place while the glue dries, apply your final coat of paint, and voila. But having these available in the shop or even with a portable compressor is invaluable. I've often thrown up outbuildings or framed in a greenhouse in just hours with these things. And even using them to pre-assemble cabinets is a breeze. They can be a little dangerous, so you do have to exercise caution. It is possible, and I have done it, where you accidentally end up with one in the hand. But exercising due caution, I think these are really good additions to the shop, and I use them all the time on a variety of projects. And you feel like James Bond when you use them. This last tool may seem a little out of place in a wood shop, but stick with me, my welder. When I was 18, I was really into Jeeps, but all those accessories you see people driving around with are extremely expensive. But I had a buddy who had a welder and a chop saw, and he was always building anything he wanted to his exact specifications. And I thought, it's cheaper for me to buy a welder than it is to buy 2 bumpers. So I went down to the local Tractor Supply, signed up for a Tractor Supply credit card, and for 12 months no interest, I bought this welder. Like my Craftsman toolkit, this welder opened up an entire wave of new possibilities of things I could build myself. Not only did I learn to build things for the Jeep and save tons of money over the years, but it's opened up into building gates and fences and my new favorite, mixing wood and metal in furniture. Every tool in this video changed my life in some way. Some by making tasks easier or faster, and others by opening up whole new worlds of what I could build and create. And by giving me the confidence to build and create those things, ultimately changed the path of my life. Links to every tool I mentioned in this video are right down in the description. And if you'd like to check out one of my cool recent builds, click right here.